Okay, in terms of some of the key things I'm going to go through with you, is give you an overview of Conversant, which is actually also going to include a 2-minute short video, which I think you're going to find of interest. I also want to get a steer from you guys in the room as to where you actually are up to with your current digital strategies. I'm sure some of you are just starting out, whereas others are going to be very immersed in digital. So just get a clear understanding as to where you already fit at the moment. I'm then going to go through a specific solution that already 3 Alliance members are actually using at the moment. So just take you through that in a little bit more depth. And then on the back of that sort of core strategy there, go through in a little bit more depth in terms of key points that we're actually finding online now. So how we can actually find an individual for you online. You'll be very, very familiar with that, with what you're doing in the catalogue space. Also around cross-device. So the average person in the UK now has 3.4 devices. So given that's how consumers are operating, it's even more important that that's how your digital marketing is feeding back in. Then personalisation. Again, already you're using this to a degree from a catalogue perspective. Obviously, you'll have a very different conversation with your existing customers versus a brand new prospect. From a digital point of view, bearing in mind it's live, we can literally go down to that one-to-one level. So we can actually have hundreds and hundreds of different creative sets that we can be feeding in to have that one-on-one conversation. Very, very powerful. Then finally, I'm going to go through incremental measurement. With so many different marketing channels available, especially online now, it can be very, very difficult for you to clearly see what's really driving genuine value. And via test and control groups, we can actually show you how we're actually driving that genuine value for you. Then finally, I'm going to give you 5 key takeouts. Okay, so first of all, just to set the scene for you, I'm going to give you some Conversant by numbers. So as Lara and Dylan have already mentioned, Conversant, we are part of the wider Epsilon group, and we actually got bought out just less than 2 years ago for $2.3 billion. That gives you an idea there in terms of the technology and the capability that we're talking about. Obviously, no one's going to spend $2.3 billion unless you've got serious capability, so just set the scene for you there. The first point is, and we're very much data-driven, exactly the same as Abacus. So every single month in the UK, we drive and see 159 million purchases. Now, this is really, really important from an online point of view because most digital media providers are actually targeting based on what people are interested in. So the type of sites they're going on, the videos they're viewing, etc. Now, that's all good information, and we use that as well. But at the end of the day, there's a big difference between what people are interested in and what they spend their money on. So when you bring the two together, fundamentally, you've got a much better understanding of consumers. When it then comes down to prospecting certain individuals or target segments, no one is better placed than us because we have that purchase data that's overlaying. The second point, which fits into the first point as well, is our reach in the UK is 38 million. So give or take, that's about 80 to 85% of the online world. Only Google has consistently got more reach than us. But again, the key point here, it's not just about the reach, it's the fact that we've got the purchase data on those, hence the reason it's rich consumer profiles. The third point is that we work with 5,000 clients every single month worldwide. Now, with everything being so trackable in the digital space, we obviously wouldn't be working with that volume of clients unless we're offering genuine value. The key element here is, though, the clients that we work with, they range from anywhere from the Fortune 500 companies down to much smaller businesses. So we literally do have solutions there that are going to cover all spectrums, depending on where you're up to in terms of your stage, where you are from a digital perspective. The fourth one, we've invested 90 million in technology in Europe alone in the last 18 months. The digital space, I mean, I've worked in this space now for about 10 years, it's changing literally every 5 minutes. The minute you've got your head around it, something new's coming out, etc., this is basically our commitment to staying ahead of the game. Then finally, not in terms of the brand Conversant, but in various forms, this business has been around now for 18 years. Now, in general business terms, that might not sound too long, but in digital terms, that's like multiple lifetimes, as I said, because things are moving so quickly. So by definition, over that period of time, we've been innovative, and it gives us actually a lot of credibility in the market. Now, what I'd like to do now is get a feel for you guys in the room as to where you're currently at with your digital strategy. So give or take, I probably spoke to about 20 to 25 Alliance members, and 10 of those now are either currently advertising with us or about to start campaigns. But from my experience, most Alliance members generally fall into 3 brackets. So the first one is you've got basically no digital experience, but you also appreciate the fact that it's probably a key area that you need to get into moving forward. The second one is that you've tried digital advertising in the past with mixed results. And the third one is you're currently very immersed in digital, but you probably feel that you could be doing a little bit better. So just by show of hands, how many of you guys would feel that you fit into category 1? Wow, I'm surprised. I thought I was expecting a lot more than that, to be fair. Okay, interesting. Number 2? And number 3? Okay, I'm quite surprised, actually. So the vast majority are in bracket 3. Okay, that's good. That gives me a better understanding in terms of the audience I'm talking to. So great. Okay, so what I'm going to go through now, I guess, is our core CRM solution, which basically we went through in terms of the video, in terms of how we're driving everything from the data. But to clarify, as I mentioned, we work with 5,000 clients. So if this solution doesn't specifically work for you, we've got solutions that kind of fit all sorts of budgets and all various stages of where you're at. But bearing in mind that most of you are actually in category 3 already, I think this is actually going to be a very, very good fit for you. So in terms of the actual process, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try and link this back as close as I can to what you're already doing in the catalogue space. And a lot of the links will actually be a lot closer than probably what you actually appreciate at the moment. So the first thing is we need to get the site tagging down there. Obviously, once the site tagging, you're already going to get the benefits, as we've said before, from an offline point of view, but then we can start pulling the data from an online point of view. The second thing, which obviously you already work with an Abacus on this level anyway, is actually providing your customer files. From there, we can then start cross-referencing and finding these people online and determine whether they're an existing customer or a brand new prospect. So if you think about it at the moment with what you're doing from a catalogue point of view, obviously you have very different strategies when you're looking at targeting your existing customers, your lapsed customers, and brand new prospects, and you're treating them differently in terms of the different messages, etc. That's exactly what we can do for you from an online point of view. All starts with identifying the individual, and then we can personalise the message from there. Now I'm going to go through both of those points within a little bit more depth later on in this presentation. Then the other element that's absolute key to this as well. So as I mentioned, cross-device. So the average person in the UK has 3.4 devices. We can reach them across their desktop, mobile, and tablet devices. But the starting point of that has to be from identifying the individual. And we can also track conversions as well when they start on one device and go through and convert on another device. If you then put these three things together, so identifying an individual, personalising the message, and reaching the individual across their devices, it's essentially exactly what you're already doing in the catalogue space. So the right message to the right person at the right time. The only difference is here that we're actually adding in the various devices. Obviously, you don't do that from an offline point of view, but the principle is exactly the same. The next key element as well is the ongoing communication. Again, from all the Alliance members that I've spoken to, it's not just a case of you sending one catalogue to an individual and hoping for the best. You're generally sending multiple catalogues to that same individual to obviously influence them over time. Now, from a digital point of view, we can do exactly the same. Because we're targeting individuals here and not cookies, we can keep in touch with people online for up to 400 days. So in layman's terms, when we're talking about cookies, the average person in the UK is actually going to have 19 different cookies associated to them. So as an example, if I'm on my laptop and I go on there as Google Chrome, that's one cookie. If I then go on there, a different browser, Internet Explorer, that's a different cookie. If I then go onto my mobile device, that's a different cookie. So other media providers that are trying to keep in touch over longer periods of time simply can't do it because the cookies basically confuse them. We are all around an individual person, which is the key to driving all of this. Then from there as well, we can actually measure this incrementally. And again, I'm going to touch on this in more depth as to how we do this. But as I said at the start, with so many different channels, etc., kind of coming into play here, very, very important that we can actually demonstrate how we're offering genuine value. We're not saying for a moment that just because we've served someone an ad and then they go on to buy that we've driven that sale. We've only played a part in that process, but the incremental analysis will basically also tell us where we're adding value and also how we're influencing your offline sales. And then the final point that's come out through Lara and Dylan a lot today as well, we are working more and more closely now with Abacus than ever before. We have now got a genuine online-offline solution. And coming in 2017, we are getting to the stage now where when you're sending out catalogues to individuals, we're going to be able to marry that up and actually serve online advertising to exactly those same people. So very, very powerful messaging, that genuine online-offline solution. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is on some of those key points I've just mentioned there is go into a little bit more depth in terms of how we actually identify an individual. So, first thing is here. If you look on the right-hand side there, we've got the email, login, direct mail, social. Essentially, that's the consumer. They're identifying themselves to you. Once they do that, obviously, it's going to be a lot easier for you to actually market to them. However, once they go into the online world, whether they're landing on your site without logging in or they're across the web generally, you actually don't know whether that's your best customer or a brand new prospect. So it's absolutely vital that you can identify them online exactly as you would offline before you can start the whole process. Now I'm going to show you in a moment actually how we identify individuals and match them to their various devices, but this is the absolute key element because as I said before, this all starts with identifying an individual. The next thing is obviously identifying an individual across their various devices. So this time spent now on digital is growing literally by the week. So the average person now is spending more than 5 hours every single day online, so it becomes even more important that you have to have some sort of digital presence to marry up with that. As I've said before, the average person has 3.4 devices, so what we can do is not only find that individual and match them to their various devices, but also track conversions as well. So if, for example, they start on a mobile device and then go across and convert on a desktop, which we're actually finding now the vast majority of people are doing. So you can see there now, even subconsciously, 60% of your time is actually spent on mobile and tablets, but you're still primarily converting on desktop because it's safer, it's easier, etc. Now, unless as a marketer you can actually see how that all marries up, you actually don't really understand what part of your marketing is working. And I'll give you an example from a personal point of view. So just prior to Christmas last year, which is 10 months ago, scary how quickly that's gone, I've got 2 young children. I was being served a lot of ads by Argos, basically buy 2 toys, get 1 free. And that was coming through on my mobile phone. There's no way in the world I'm going to search through the Argos site for literally thousands of toys. It would be an absolute nightmare. 2 days later, in my own time, I went onto my laptop, searched for Argos, went through and made the purchases. Now, I've got no idea whether Argos see me as an individual person, but if they don't, they're going to be looking at that going, well, my search on desktop has worked fantastically well. When in actual fact, it was their mobile advertising that actually drove the conversion on the desktop. If you can't see that, you never really know what is and isn't working. So we get a lot of marketers that will come to us to start off with and say, for example, our mobile advertising doesn't work if you're tracking conversions. And the only reason they're saying that is because they've got no real way of actually measuring the impact that mobile advertising is having on desktop conversions and vice versa. So very, very important consideration. Then finally on that as well, is that we've actually been verified by ComScore in terms of our match rate. So ComScore, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with them based on the fact that most of you are sort of in pot 3. They're a large independent player in the digital space. So based on a sample size of 1.5 million, we actually got a match rate of 96%. So that's matching an individual to their various devices. That gives you an idea as to how powerful this technology is. And now the clever bit. So this is actually how we identify an individual online and also how we match them to their various devices. So first of all, if you start down here with number 1. So when we work with a brand on this sort of CRM solution, so I'll use June as an example, a brand that we already work with in this space. So they provide us with their customer files from at least the last 2 years. So the name, physical address, email address, what that customer's bought, etc. It then goes through to agility. Again, agility has been mentioned by Lara and Dylan already today. Then what we get left with from a Conversant point of view is an individual ID number. So essentially all the PII has been taken out before it comes to us, but sat behind that individual ID number is that person's name, address, email, etc. So you take me as an example. Say I'm a customer of June. I then go online on my laptop, I make a purchase with another brand that's connected to the Conversant network. To do that, I have to enter my address details. The minute I enter my address details related to that purchase, it's then going to match back to the individual ID number because we have the address details there. You then have a hard match between the individual ID number, i.e. an individual person, and the laptop. 70% of people now are actually opening emails on their phone. So I open the email related to that purchase. Again, it's related all back to that individual ID. So we've now got a hard match between that individual, the laptop, and the mobile phone. This is happening at scale all the time. On the right-hand side, you can bring in other things like browsing behavior, location, IP, etc. And to clarify, when you bring all this together, this is what we got the 96% match rate on. So this is how we're finding an individual. So if you bear in mind there as well, when we're getting these customer files, some of those customers could be offline only. So they've never actually been on your website and bought, that we can then find them online for you. So this is very, very powerful in how it all comes together. If anyone's got any specific questions around this and how we do it, obviously I'm going to be around for the rest of the day anyway, so let me know. But this is the absolute key to how we then drive everything from there. Okay, in terms of personalisation. So as I've said a couple of times now, you guys are very used to this in terms of having a different conversation with your lapsed customers versus existing customers and brand new prospects. From an online point of view, because it's done in real time, we can literally go down to that one-on-one level. Now, how we do the personalisation, it's basically twofold. So one, it's based on what we're seeing them do with you. So the products they've bought from you, what they're doing on your site, so the categories that they're viewing, the particular products that they're viewing, etc. That helps us to build a profile that we can then start serving personalised ads from there. Secondary to that, though, we're also using all the data that we're having from everything else that we're connected with. So what they're doing with other brands, are they buying offline there, are they buying online, the type of products that they're buying elsewhere. And from there is how we determine what we're essentially going to serve them at that particular time on the right device. So if you take these two examples, so both of them very, very similar in terms of their age, they both live in London, they're both sports fanatics, etc. But the key point of difference is the guy at the top there has shown more tendencies that he's interested in basketball, whereas the guy at the bottom is more interested in golf. So you can see there that some of the creative, it looks very, very similar in terms of the template, but the actual images and the content are actually very, very different, and that's personalised down to that one-on-one level. Likewise, you'll also notice as well, the guy at the top there, far right, there's actually an in-store only offer, and that is because we've actually seen him buying in-store predominantly elsewhere, whereas the guy at the bottom is actually an online offer. So again, we're really fitting in with how they're normally buying and what we're seeing elsewhere. Very, very powerful. And then finally, in terms of incremental measurement, so I think this is a huge challenge in the market generally, but especially from an online point of view. As I said, determining really what is genuinely driving value for you. Now, how we do this when we work with a brand, we basically form test and control groups. So between 90 to 95% of your audience will go into the test group at random, and they will actually be receiving the Conversant personalised ads, so are the ads that we want them to receive. The remaining 5 to 10% will actually go into the control group, and what they'll receive is charity ads, which we actually pay for. So if you think that both groups have got exactly the same opportunity to be exposed to everything else you're doing, your direct mail, your email, if you're doing search, if you're doing radio, TV, whatever else you're doing, exactly the same opportunity. The only difference is that one group receives the Conversant personalised ads, the other one doesn't. From there, you're then going to see an uplift in terms of things like conversion rates, and you can actually bring it down back to an incremental revenue. So as I said, we're not saying for a minute just because we've served someone an ad that they've gone through and bought, we can actually bring it down to this incremental revenue. When you actually get the clear insights on this, it's very, very clear then what isn't working, and it's very much easier for you to actually upscale and invest more because you've actually got the proof that it's working for you. So very, very powerful. Okay, so in terms of the key takeouts, and hopefully this has really come out through the presentation anyway, the absolute key to this online, as it is offline as well, is actually identifying that individual. So we can do this for you. Exactly the same with Abacus. We're very much a data-driven business. So even, for example, if you just look to do prospecting campaigns with us, we've got that purchase data. There's nobody else in the market digitally that knows more about consumers than what we do. We've got the cross-device capability. This is becoming more and more important now as consumers are operating across their multiple devices. Obviously, from a marketing point of view, you have to mirror that. And personalisation, obviously, if you're going down to that one-on-one level and making it more relevant for them, obviously, in theory, the results are going to be better as a result rather than a one-size-fits-all, which is how a lot of digital marketing tends to be. And then finally, as I said, the proof is going to be in the pudding that we're actually measuring all of this based on incremental measurement. And that's it from me, guys. As I said, I will be around for the rest of the afternoon, and I've also got a round table, so if you've got any specific questions, feel free to grab me at any point. Thank you.